Hey there again. It's the Lean Into Art Cast, the show where a couple visual storytellers get together, take a walk around a topic. Well, rather try to engage with the topic with their hands, do something with the topic, then take a walk around the topic. We think hard about visual storytelling, so you will too. My name is Jersey Drozd, cartoonist and teaching artist. The other host is...
Hey, I'm Rob Stenzinger. I'm a coder and designer and facilitator of various sorts. And to join us on this special topic today, we'll talk about that. But we have a guest, and it's Jesse Kaufman. Welcome, Jesse.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah.
Jesse, do you have like a 2 to 3 word description of what your job is, like we do?
Yes, I'm the coalition director of a substance abuse prevention coalition in Chelsea, Michigan.
Called Seriously Chelsea.
Mm-hmm.
Aha. That is I did not think that you had such a... You told us before the show that you didn't have the concise description to put things in 140 characters, and I thought this would be a lot longer description.
Well, that was the boring professional one that most people hear and are like, I don't know what most of those words mean. But
well, okay, well, what do those words mean?
It means it's Substance Abuse Prevention Coalition. So it's a community group who's working to keep adolescents from using drugs or delaying their age of first use.
That was also brief. That's awesome.
And Jesse has
been... You don't have to be that brief.
Jesse and I worked together on a project that I know I've talked about on the show a bunch of times called Captain Seriously and the Supermaster Sentinels. The last 4 or 5 years, we've been making these comics together. And we're gonna break down like what that means when I say we make comics together. But you know, for I think the shorthand would be is that Jesse represents sort of stakeholder client, and I represent creative partner and fellow advocate. And we're going to talk about iteration today, like rapid iteration, right, Rob?
Yeah, and in planning this episode, it really sounds like, I mean, what better project to have some visual storytelling and a collaboration about it to then dig into some facets of collaborating where, like if you start out a project, you don't necessarily always know everything that has to go into it. And that's a different kind of collaboration than one that's very prescriptive. And then inherently there's somehow more trust comes into existence. And I think it will be fun and instructive and interesting to explore that, especially with you guys.
There's a special interesting element to this project that we do in that it is constantly iterating, because Jesse, when we started out, right, this was a book made for 2nd graders, 3rd graders when we did, this book.
Mm-hmm.
And then
I have the 2nd grade book.
Yeah, there's the 2nd grade book, which was a coloring book. It was actually a coloring book comic, right?
Yep.
And then, yeah, there we go. And then as we progressed up to the grades, like each year they get a new book, and we aged the story up with the kids. And there were lots of discussions happening internally between me and Jesse and the other stakeholders in terms of what's appropriate content for these different age groups. What kinds of things are they dealing with? How can we tailor stories to address what they actually need at this time? And this has culminated in, at the time of this recording, we just launched the 8th grade book. A lot changes in a story that's appropriate for 2nd graders to 8th graders. I think that's going to be sort of the case in point that we'll use today to explore this whole idea of how do you iterate, and how do you iterate with stakeholders and collaborative partners, and how do you find trust between all these different parties, right?
Yes. I wonder how we're going to tackle this.
I wonder too. But before we tackle it, we got some business to do. We got to pay the bills, keep the lights on, as it were, like they say in television. We've got advertisers that we have to honor. Rob, who are the advertisers? Who's advertising the show advertising on the show this time?
Well, this special episode of Lean Into Art happens to be sponsored by the creators of Lean Into Art, Jersey Drozd and Rob Stenzinger. And how that works is a few different ways. And in this ad spot, we're going to talk about other projects that we work on and share with the world. And if by you supporting those projects, you're supporting us and supporting Lean Into Art. One of those is the comic Boulder and Fleet, which you can check out at boulderandfleet.com. What is this fantastic comic about a bear and a bird all about, Jersey?
It's about a bear and a bird who are trying to carve out a living in the world by being adventurers for hire, and there's a lot of parallels to being a freelancer that gets expressed through the story. I mean, they say write what you know. So I write about two struggling freelancers trying to help people as best they can, operating in a spirit of service, and not always coming out ahead, but always doing the best they can to do the right thing. The big idea is, like what I always say when I do school visits, is my favorite thing in the world to draw is cute animals or cute things being very brave. And that's what this comic is mostly about for me. So yes, it's at boulderandfleet.com. I do want to say that if anyone wants to check out the Boulder and Fleet Patreon, I just finished thumbnailing a short story that I'm going to try to ink every day in Inktober. I announced on the last episode of Lean Into Art. I've been posting all of the progress on my Patreon for even at the dollar levels of subscribing, of supporting there. I posted the script, I posted the post-it note thumbnails, and I posted the actual dummy of the book there, so you can watch the whole process come together. And there's like lots of different versions of the pages and stuff. So if you're a process nerd, you can go check out patreon.com/Jersey. Rob, you do a thing too besides Lean Into Art. You make games.
I do. And one of those games is called This Panda Needs You. And it's all about this little cute panda that needs to set things right, because this panda keeps encountering stacks of blocks that get knocked over by a little troublemaking cloud. Cloud knocks him over, and panda needs your help to put things back the way they were. And so it's all about pattern matching and shape recognition and whatnot for early players of the game, and for folks of all ages. It's really just it's a calm puzzle game to play. And you can learn more about it at this-panda.com. It's available for iPhone and iPad.
iOS devices.
It's also good for teaching how to take turns. My daughter and I, when we take turns to play it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Well, there's an endorsement right there. And if you show up to this thing and you're like, hey, I just like showing up to the show because I like the way you guys unbox, unpack, and think about things. We make products that represent that skill set as well. And that's at leanintoart.com/workshops. There you can find, a 4-session comics workshop series that is taken right from my classrooms and turned into a video classroom called Comics Fundamentals. Rob has great comics workshops on there too, like making video games from your creator-owned comics, storytelling to make your comics UI awesome. If you know how to do comic storytelling, then you are equipped with the skills necessary to think about user experience for the presentation of your comic. And Rob's workshop gives you a framework for sort of investigating those ideas on your own. Again, all these are available at a price of your choosing. You can say I'm going to get it for free, or you can, give us a tip, like $1, $2, whatever you think that these things are worth. So once again, that's at leanintoart.com/workshops. And thanks to everybody who has supported us by, getting those products. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Ready to go on the ground, Rob?
Yeah. So let's start with this this creation of Captain Seriously. What you mentioned from 3rd to 8th grade. So there's 5 books or 6 books?
There are 6 books.
6
second
books.
through
Okay.
8th grade.
Second
Well,
through 8th. Okay.
And then 2 additional anthologies.
That's right. Okay.
Oh.
Yeah. Gosh, I wonder, Jesse, you talk about this a lot, so I'm wondering if you could like frame up what the project really is.
Yeah. So we have been giving the comics to kids in the schools for several years and wanted to build that experience for them, give them more than just we show up in the classroom. Well, I mean, seriously, the coalition I represent, we're in the schools a bunch, but in terms of the Captain Seriously project, it's kind of a once a year we show up with a comic book. So we wanted to kind of build that out a little bit. And part of that was asking Jersey to host a comics workshop where he could teach kids how to create their own comics, and they could kind of contribute to the Captain Seriously and the Supermaster Sentinels story. So we have done 2 of those for middle school students, and then our coalition professionally prints the book that they create.
So yeah, here's one of the books right here, one of the anthologies that the kids put together, and through the multi-week workshop, they create their own characters to interact in the world of Captain Seriously and the Supermaster Sentinels. and then create short stories about the characters, right? So here's one of the stories where, you know, they're interacting with some of the pre-existing characters. It's a lot of fun for me as somebody who creates these characters to watch kids build upon that world. But it's also cool to see how the kids sort of internalize I don't want to say messaging, because like we don't preach in the stories, right? But we try to suggest through the stories, right? We model. The stories are a modeling exercise, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, okay. So how are you pulling that off? This sounds a lot like you have pro-social messages integrated with a narrative, but it's not like there's some rhetorical something in there. How do you how do you pull that off, and how do you know it's accomplishing that?
Jesse, what does that process look like when we sit down to plan out a book?
So it kind of starts with the whatever age group we're at. We talk to the school administrators or a select group of teachers, and we say, what are some of the issues that are presented in your class right now? And what are some things that you would want, like if you had a central message that you would want to share with this grade level, what would that be? And we kind of sit with them. Jersey's in on that meeting. We brainstorm a bit. He can ask some clarifying questions. And for instance, the 5th grade book, the principal said, we've got, you know, a group of girls that have really are kind of being a little kind of mean to the other girls, and some of the kids who usually are making pretty good decisions are kind of being pulled into that. And so Jersey said, great, let's run with that idea, and came up with a 5th grade book that features that.
Yeah, and we did this story where one of the heroes of the good guy team, Captain Yarley, has a run-in with Madeleine from the bad guys team. And Madeleine is a fun character because she's a bad guy who's not really that good at being bad, but she wants to be bad, you know? And so like here she is sitting on the Chelsea clock tower, and Captain Yarley's like, oh my gosh, are you smoking? She's like, no, it's, you know, high fructose corn syrup. Pretty evil, huh? But they wind up going on an escapade where Captain Yarley is going to teach, or rather, Madeleine is going to teach Captain Yarley on how to be cool, which is, in her words, that's just kind of bad. And so they wind up doing graffiti and these other things. And then we actually incorporate local kids into the stories too, right?
Yeah. Wow. So in the with the 4th grade book, the principal was doing a like acts of kindness competition or in the school, and so we found a neat way to kind of support that program. And so the kids could be nominated by their classmates or teachers for doing, you know, acts of kindness in the school, and then the kids that were selected from that were chosen to be cartoonized by Jersey and placed in the book, and then we feature them when we do a book release. Celebrate them, and we actually use their first names in the book too.
Right. So yeah, so then they show up as like either characters who assist in the adventure or sometimes even outright save the heroes in the adventure, which I've seen firsthand gets like a really positive response from especially the younger kids, like 4th, 5th grade. They get really excited to see their classmates operating in the story. So we put local landmarks in the stories. We make sure that it's rooted in the town that they're all in. We emphasize that to the kids when we deliver the books. Like, these comics were made specifically for you. No other kids in the world get these comics, you know? And then it's further bolstered by having, like, you know, leaders in their community appearing within the world, right?
And one of the kids that was featured in one of the early books started taking the comics workshop. And I haven't asked her if that was the impact of that, but I mean, you could see that it would make her more comfortable and interested in taking the workshop.
That's so cool. And then, yeah, go ahead, Rob.
Well, let's see. No, let's continue where you were going. And
I didn't know if we wanted to talk about like where it all like sort of like spiraled out until when we actually created mascots of the characters. I got the video right here.
Well, yeah, I would like to take a step like way back and say that it really started. It preceded me, so I don't. This is all folklore for me. But the idea was that Jersey was artist in residence at the library, and a marketing firm that we were working with said, you guys should come up with a superhero, like a captain, or not, it wasn't Captain Seriously. It was a seriously themed superhero. And the director of the library was on our coalition, said, we have this artist in residence here, And that's kind of how the project started, was, you know, an idea from one person being passed to a group, someone knowing Jersey, and bring him in and kind of talking about that initially. So that was the first book. And then the second book, I don't know what, again, I wasn't there yet, but at some point in time, I was like, okay, this seemed like it went well. Let's do a second book. And then I was actually in the planning meeting for the second book. And that it was there that I think the idea for, let's make a book that follows a new book every year, that follows a cohort of students all the way up until they graduate.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where, yeah, that kind of commitment was made. And it's an audacious commitment.
I know, right? It's like at the time, I remember thinking like, this would be really cool if we can do it, you know, but we're really talking about like a 10-year commitment, right?
I was totally new, so I was like, well, what? That'll be awesome. What?
So that's it. That is so wild. Like this is like a really, it's like right from the beginning, at the core of the concept is a lot. There's so much investment from all parties in belief and participation, and that kind of like, or just in the vision of like, well, a decade of work. I don't normally go picking up a decade of work, you know, every day. So this sounds like, yeah, like that's a big thing. And I don't, it's so big and alien, like that. How would you say that came about, other than just,
yeah, that makes sense. So
or what ifing?
It probably helps to explain a little bit more about SRSLY. So like I said earlier, Substance Abuse Prevention Coalition, and part of a best practice of a Substance Abuse Prevention Coalition is to have sector representation. In fact, there's the model for that is put out by an organization called CADCA, Community Anti-Drug Coalitions of America. I'm sorry, this will be jargon-rich portion of the show. And they want 12 sectors represented. So you got your business, your law enforcement, your schools, your hospital, your, did I say churches, or like religious organizations, parents, youth, service organizations, other youth serving organizations, other substance abuse treatment organizations. I don't know how many I'm at, but you can get the picture that there very quickly becomes a lot of people involved. And for us in particular, the way that manifests in SRSLY is that we have an adult steering committee and a youth steering committee, and we leave the sustainability capacity issues to the adults, and we leave the like programmatic planning initiatives to the students. And so it is very youth-led. One of our focuses is youth voice. We, early on, I can't take any credit for this, coalition, the idea was we don't want to be doing a bunch of finger wagging. We want to be doing positive, fun, protective stuff, and focus on those pieces so that people want to be involved with this, so that people want, you know, that it doesn't feel as judgmental as sometimes telling people not to do drugs can feel. And so it really kind of came from that, that idea of like, we want to have fun. I mean, the name SRSLY is a good example of this. The marketing firm, Edgar Norman Creative, came up with it. And they said, you know, it's text language for the word SRSLY, SRSLY. And the idea is that we're dealing with a serious issue, but we're not going to take ourselves too seriously. And they came up with bright green color and, you know, pretty strong brand on that front. But that's kind of the guiding principle. And because we have so many people involved, there's some ways in which that I think more naturally leads into a project that could last this long and continue to grow as you know, as you continue.
Because yeah, it's also grown beyond just Chelsea now.
Yep.
So like it's in different towns, and I've even updated some of the Captain SRSLY comics to reflect local landmarks and local students from those other towns now.
That's amazing. So, and I know like so this is thoughtful kind of stuff. This is some things that like a lot of times when we talk on the ground and we think very pragmatic, but like planning a project of any kind of scale or complexity this is on the ground, that you need to think this kind of stuff through. And I just want to have a couple of reaction points. Like, what's amazing is this is an example of thinking very systemically, like from its very foundation. And that's a different kind of creative act to participate in than something that's like transactional and very immediate. Where so and it's like you've woven this these sets of principles, and then things that embody those principles, and handed out jobs and purposes, and all of a sudden you've got this big machine, but it's not chaos. And well, okay, so it can get chaotic. Oh, interesting. What's that look like?
I would just, mostly my office is what that looks like, but right. I mean, I will say that Chelsea is a community that really collaborates. Like, that is the spirit of that town, and the coalition, I think, had a lot of the right people at the right time with the right experiences and skills and passions and interests to come together and really create something that often feels, magical, because it I've worked in other communities, and people, if you want to go, you come talking to them about collaboration, they're like, what do you want? You're going to ask something of me? I don't, no thanks. And they don't hear that, like, they're not looking for opportunity, really. They're worried about their own, fences. And so that is not how just about every person that's involved with our coalition, every person that's involved with our coalition is thinking about, how can I contribute to the betterment of our community? And there's another point in there, that because it's a substance abuse prevention coalition, because we're talking about changing lifestyle choices in a larger community, the nature of our work is to, like, we're collecting community assessment data, and we're creating logic models and strategic plans based on that data, and that informs, and action plans inform all the things that we do. And so it requires that kind of thinking. And I think what's kind of special about SRSLY is that we take that very, sounds boring thinking, and get to a point where we're like, but let's have comics, let's do this fun stuff. Let's have a duct tape fashion show and have free outdoor movies, and like,
it's way more natural than you think. So here's a magic. I have to wonder. So the disciplines that I'm about to name are represented in a variety of different arenas and have different names. But the one area where I encounter them is product design, innovation, that kind of stuff, rapid testing and development of hypotheses for business. And there's this whole, one of these methods is called, like, just human-centered design. And like a lot of it is there's a great set of learning materials that IDEO shares. And IDEO is a design firm that does a great job designing and teaching and whatnot. And human-centered design, one of the huge things that, like, where this deceptively surprisingly magical set of qualities that, like, a group of people can, like, come up with, defining something that seems so surprising, it comes from paying attention to people and listening to where what kind of things seem to be challenging them, and maybe pain points, and then also noticing, like, what do they care about, and what is delightful and whatnot. And by finding strong empathy for that, you get that superpower to pull off the magic, where it's like you're outside your own thinking limits, and you've got a shot at doing that. So is that kind of how does that represent itself in your world, Jesse?
Yeah, absolutely. We would be DOA if we didn't have the youth involvement we do. I mean, the asking youth members for their perspective on so many things, asking them to help us decide our budget, asking us to say, are we doing this program again, or are we not? There are absolutely things that we would never have thought of the duct tape fashion show is a good example. We had a duct tape fashion show. We were just having a regular coalition meeting and saying, like, you know, we very often have just like a brainstorming time, and a kid says, you know, let's do a duct tape. A pair of girls, they're like 6th graders, 7th graders. Let's do a duct tape fashion show. And there are adults there. They're like, great, what does that look like? And they're like, this and this and this and this. And then all of a sudden we have a duct tape fashion show. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to print off 100 ballots. That'll be good for a first time. 200 people show up, and I'm running to the copy machine to double our ballots. I mean, and that's because kids knew, you know, they were excited about it. They word of mouth and all those things, but like that was the thing that they wanted. And those are, yeah, it's just great. And if there was just adults in a room, we would never have gotten there. Never.
And that's that just takes a lot. Like, so that takes you're the kind of that takes humility and creativity and trust on your group's part. It sounds pretty amazing, and I just think it's important to recognize that.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Again, I can't really claim any of that. I inherited all this magic. Just trying to keep it alive. One other thing that I would say that I thought it ties into the Captain Seriously project a little bit is that similarly, we were having a conversation about how to train new members. You know, what should new members of Seriously know? How do they get the information? How do they feel equipped to represent Seriously at some point in time if they want to do that? And one of the kids said, wouldn't it be awesome if we had a Seriously Minecraft server where people could come and engage with Seriously and learn about it? And I was like, blah, 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 Minecraft, seriously? That's all I understood. I don't know what that means. And thankfully, there was another adult in the room, the youth and teen librarian, who's great and has been a strong part of the coalition. She says, oh, that's great. It's like, library maybe can host it, and we'll make all these connections. And we now are working on a Seriously Minecraft server that's got the landmarks of Chelsea, and it's like the clock tower and the Jiffy Mix stacks. Jiffy Mix is from Chelsea, and the library is represented in it. And currently we're working on, it's a steep learning curve for me, entities, I think, in Minecraft, where like the little walk around characters, and we're putting Captain Seriously characters in that game. So there's a Turnbuckle Tutwiler. We're working, there's Professor Von Snotbottom and Dame Ladycat. All these people are shaping up into the game. And it's because a kid was like, why don't we try this? And there was an adult there who heard that and said, yeah, let's try that. You know, thank goodness for them, because I was scratching my head. So it's like totally the youth, but then also multiple voices and teams outside of, you know, obviously myself.
Well, and while tying it back to the comic, I mean, so it's clear that like that sort of system of generating ideas and acting upon, you know, like the trust and empathy and the needs. Well, you entered a space where you needed a comic at some point. I know the first one predates you, but
yeah, part of that conversation was part of that was having early access to Seriously, so kids start to feel comfortable with Seriously before they get to the age where we really get involved in things, because it's not really appropriate to talk to really young children about drugs. I mean, it's not a part of their world at that point. It doesn't really help them to try and educate them about the dangers of them at that point. And so it was kind of like, well, how do we help them be comfortable with Seriously and have a sense of what Seriously is, and build these protective conditions within them, without, you know, doing lots of drugs, alcohol stuff. And so, you know, Jersey was there and did a great job with that transition. And yeah, I mean, we've got great stories that don't hit you over the head about washing your hands or looking to adults for help or being yourself.
Right. Well, that was very much, to quote Kazuki Buishi, it's one of those like preparing for opportunities rather than searching for opportunities. Because yeah, I just happened to be the artist in residence in Chelsea, and it was brought to my attention there was an organization looking for somebody to come up with comics for young people that were entertaining, fun action stories with a pro-social message sort of woven in. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm your guy. Like, that's what I do. That's like my specialty, right? And this is maybe we can talk a little bit about that collaboration and trust aspect. Is when we were doing second grade, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, I felt like this is my element. This is me operating at full capacity, perfect strength. I know how to do this in my sleep. When we started getting into the upper grades, we noticed that kids were interacting with the material differently, right? So the 7th grade book came out. We really liked the book. Jesse, you reacted to it very emotionally. I remember when we, because
here, let me show you. I will show you what brought tears to my eyes. This, yeah, right here. Oh, it's beautiful. Where the bad guy is talking, and he's like, and when I'm finished with you, and then doink, and then you find out that the kids have got involved in the action, and they're going to help save the day. And I was just like, oh.
And it's right after Monstrike, the main bad guy, like really brutalizes the hero, because we're like, okay, this is 7th grade. We can have like some more consequence of violence, right? So like there hasn't been like up to this point, there wasn't any like fist punching happening in the comic at all. So this was like, oh my gosh, look at, he's pounding his head on the ground. He's like, he's actually, you know, Captain Seriously, his costume's ripped up. He's got bruises. Like, this is serious. And so then when the kids show up, and then Monstrike even threatens to harm the children, you know, like this is like, we're creating real stakes. And so then when the kids, you know, turn the tide with this silly little game of,
and if you move up, the top panel, all that you see, all the heroes get knocked out. Like, that's what hit me, was like the heroes have been knocked out, and these kids are like, well, we're gonna rise up, right? Like, we're not gonna take this either. And I was just like, oh.
so we both felt like, yeah, we were both like, we felt that the product was very successful in terms of what it was set out to do, but the length, we saw kids interacting with it differently, because now they're 7th grade, these kids are reading manga, they're looking for a longer read. So then we came up with a hypothesis, and we said, okay, I think the next book needs to be longer. I think we need to raise the stakes even more. And I remember saying something to the effect of, I think page 1 should show like the hometown decimated, like post-apocalyptic, Hunger Games, Insurgent, Mad Max future. I think that will win over the kids' trust. But this is a total hypothesis, right? Jesse and I both kind of talked about it, and we both felt in our guts, like, that feels right. We went, but then we had to test the hypothesis. You know, we went and talked to stakeholders. We had lots of conversations with them about like what kinds of things we want to do. I remember doing a lot of different character sketches and premise building to pitch the idea to you guys. And we sort of were like, I felt like we were punching the edges of it all the time, right? Like there was like, well, I think I said something to the effect of, I think the cover needs to have Captain Seriously's costume on the ground with a skeleton in it. Like, and it doesn't have to really be him, but we sort of hint that he's dead. You know, and I think there was like this in the room.
well, yeah, it's definitely.
I was going to take stakes. Yeah, and there was actually more to that conversation, because 8th grade is where they go to the 8th grade. They do the 8th grade field trip to DC, Washington DC. Oh, yeah. And so at one point in time, we were saying, okay, so Washington DC is going to be the theme, and but we still need this apocalyptic theme. And so I think we wisely decided not to have the apocalypse happen in Washington, D.C. with these kids there. we adjusted appropriately, I think.
Right.
Well, and you know, some summer blockbusters have entered that territory already. So,
sure.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's always different with comics, though, because it's a static medium and people can look at the picture for a long time. You know, it's not like just like a fleeting thing that happens on the screen that's ephemeral. Like movies feel somehow more ephemeral than comics. And I think comics, understandably, but I think unfairly, get targeted for things like that, for shocking visuals a little bit more than other media do.
Well, it's a habit we're still getting over in America.
Yeah. Yeah. But so we came up with this idea of like, okay, we're gonna do a 40-page book this time, and we're gonna do it in black and white. And I can pull up on the screen like to show you like the difference in look that we came up with. So here's like a page from one of the younger books. This was, I think, 3rd grade. And you can see, you know, very vibrant and colorful, clean line, you know, bold look. And then this is the look we came up with for the 8th grade book, right?
That's quite a change. It's somber by comparison.
Yeah, and here's like the Captain Seriously headquarters, like in ruins, right?
Yeah.
And here's our two main characters sort of sorting out a very emotional moment in the story, which maybe we can talk about in a minute. But what I think is what I was really grateful to Jesse for, and maybe we can talk about this a little bit, Jesse, is that you did a lot of testing our assumptions on this thing. Because after we had all these discussions, I think we both felt a very strong gut feeling that we were on the right track with everything. But at different stages of the process, you were sharing the materials in progress with like not only stakeholders, but also kids who are going to interact with this stuff eventually, right?
Yeah, yeah. So initially, I shared it mostly with the school administration and the school counselor, the youth and teen librarian, and then with my my equivalents in the other communities, the other coalition directors in some of the other communities. And there was some feedback, about kids having, discomfort with kids potentially having weapons. We had a character design where she had like kind of a bow staff, and people just talking through some of that. I should probably give a little bit of context. I've grown up reading comics. I'm a comics enthusiast, so I'm like on board with comics. Not everybody that we work with is like rah comics. So there was a little bit. You have to have some conversations, and for me, it was really approaching them as like, I honestly want your feedback, and I might push back on the things that you share or do more explaining. But it's helpful to know, for us, because it's so much community work, it is helpful to know what the other voices are. And even if you don't agree with them, if you don't choose to follow them, I'm of the opinion that it helps to know that they're out there and what they are. So I think it did, in a lot of ways, it did help kind of guide us. That's part of the reason why we scrapped the DC idea, because one of the other coalition directors responded kind of strongly to like, really, DC, where the kids are supposed to go on their field trip, and you're gonna like parents see this book where the anyway, and it was great, like, okay, good, thanks. And so that, I think that was guiding it. And then, it's all teamwork. I asked the principal if he could recommend a like smart, critical thinking, little bit of snarky, graduating 8th grader who is now a 9th grader. And so she's not, in that cohort of the books. She kind of had heard about it and knew what it was, but she hadn't followed along really the whole way. And we had her read kind of the initial outline, and then even had her read the thumbnails too. And she had some questions and did some clarifying, and then she was like, yeah, this is awesome. And I was like, I'm happy to give you a copy when it's out. And she's like, yes, please. And I was like, oh, good. And you could tell that she, some kids, when I was a kid at that age, I would have been like, yay, comics, awesome. I wouldn't have applied any much critical thinking to it. I would have been like, thank you. But she, you could tell that she was a critical thinker and was willing to, provide criticism if she found it. In a couple of places, yeah, she wanted some clarification, but that I felt really good about how that panned out too.
Which by the way was super helpful criticism, because she pointed out very correctly that there was no place in the story where I had really clearly delineated what the villain's motivation was.
Yeah.
And there's that panel and I don't want to spoil the comic. I mean, I don't know how people can come to the Ann Arbor Comic Arts Festival next year. You can meet Jesse and get some comics there. But there's a panel where the main villain puts his hand on his chest and does this like, wow, kind of pose. And the panel, Jesse, and he he gives you his rationale. And like that panel didn't exist before she said that. And I was like, oh my God, she got me. We don't know, I know, but I didn't put it in the story. So yeah. And then other things got cut for very good reasons. Like for instance, I got a page here pulled up with my favorite character, and I make no secret about it. It's Dame Lady Cat. And it's a lighter moment in this otherwise very somber story where they go to get her help. You got to get the band back together, as it were, and go take on this bad guy. And she's since retired. She's living in this Victorian house in the middle of a wasteland, which I think is actually a pretty funny gag. But But in one of the original drafts of the story, I thought, well, this is a great opportunity to win the trust of the kids, because I thought, perhaps we can dig into this in a little bit, is like I really spent a lot of time really thinking hard and trying to put myself back into where I was when I was in 8th grade. Like when I was 13, 14 years old, what was I dealing with and what was my view of the world? Like really trying to inhabit my skin when I was that age. And I know that part of, or at least my memory says that part of my reacting to the world was the sense of falsehood in adults' platitudes, right? My mom tells me to just, if somebody makes fun of you, just ignore them. Well, that didn't work. That didn't stop the bullying, you know, like just ignoring them meant that they just pushed me from behind. So mom is clearly wrong on this point in some way. There's some truth that I have to find on my own, right? And also I was discovering like comics that were a little bit older for me, like things like Heavy Metal Magazine, Epic Illustrated, and so on. Anyway, so I'm giving some back end to explain this little story point that I came up with, is I thought a great way to win the kids' trust would be as if when Dame Lady Cat is selected to help, she's like, oh, you're finally going to take on the bad guy? It's about damn time. She says the word damn. And because Dame Lady Cat is the prim and proper one, she doesn't use contractions, she's very polite. And I thought that will be a shocker to the kids who grew up with this character, to see her say damn. And it's just like in Transformers the movie, 1986, when Spike says the S word when Unicron is eating Moonbase 2. As a little kid, that electrified me. It's like, this is like a grown-up Transformers show, man. Even though now I don't want to grow up show Transformers show. But you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
We put it to the stakeholders and we got some interesting feedback, right, Jesse?
Yeah, so I talked with Jersey a little bit about it, and I was sold. And so I was like, okay, let's talk about this. And so first we talked with the other coalition directors, and they're in different communities. I mean, we're all located kind of in different portions of the same county, some overlap in over counties, but we have different communities and different responses to things, and they've had different experiences as a coalition. So I was kind of throwing it out there, and they were pushing back on it. And, you know, they were doing some comparison about, they were saying about language and ratings, and I was I was pulling up movie ratings and all the dams and all the other movies. And I was like, I was on trial. Anyway, so I did that little go around with them, and, you know, it was all on good terms. But then I asked the principal, and from my perspective, because they're a partner in our coalition, we're guests in their school. Right. They're allowing us to show up, take instructional time to hand out free comics to every student in their school, but with a message that we want to promote. And they buy into the message and they agree with it, but it is like, I'm a guest in their space. I want to be a good steward of that relationship. And if there's a complaint about this book that the principal allowed distributed to every kid, he's going to take the heat. So when I asked him, he said, nope, absolutely not. And it was not a discussion. I didn't pursue it, because he was reading through it and he's like, oh, this is great. This is wonderful. Like, he's buying it. He's totally bought in on the comic, and he sees damn, and he goes, nope, that's not going to be there. And just keeps going. And I was like, okay, settled.
Yep. That was my reaction as well. Yeah. It's like, this isn't something where like my creative integrity is in any kind of jeopardy, right? This is something where like, and that's part of the I guess, I don't want to say tensions you navigate, but it's part of the web of concerns that you navigate when you're collaborating on something like this, right? It's like I feel a strong sense of I'm creating something in service of something, right? I'm there to serve seriously. I'm there to serve the kids, and I'm here to make as good art as I can to do those things. But there's my insertion of my artistic vision ends at a certain point, right? I hope that makes sense. I hope that doesn't sound like defeatist talk.
No, I mean, and part of that, in my opinion, part of that is, I mean, we have a really good relationship with the school, and we're fortunate in that way. Not all people that do the work that we do have good relationships with schools, and so I am very aware of that, and I'm going to be a very good steward of that. I do not want to waste that, and so it's just it's just being aware of those pieces and the value. I mean, I think gratitude is a really kind of significant value, and so having gratitude for them allowing us in the school as much as they do, and time with their kids as much as they do, I'm not going to jeopardize that for,
or take it for granted in any way. Yeah.
Right. And so, for me, that was very clear. Like, okay, okay, there's no need to push on that anymore. And I wasn't even really that disappointed, to be honest with you, because I felt like that is the decision there. And there's so much other value in this book than to fixate on one little thing. I mean,
but also, I mean, there's what I also detect a lot in the relationships that we navigate with this project is there's also a sense of knowing who knows best the constituency, right? They're the ones who spend most of the time with these kids. They know their constituency, right? And that's the value of their opinion in these things. Yeah.
Well, and I mean, it's a web of webs where you have them as a constituent, they have others as constituents, and it's as you pointed out. So now, and at some point when you've got this hierarchy of like, well, what's our purpose for doing this, and is this impeding our purpose and whatnot, or is this, I mean, just being willing to ask the question, what is this design choice about, and being able to set aside the for a variety of factors, just to set it aside if it makes sense, because like you maybe it would be a choice that would adjust the printing budget too much, or maybe there's you can have a lot of design choices that create other effects, content causing disharmony with an audience being this one. And it's interesting. So what I'm wondering, if in a few minutes, or in a minute and a half or so, if we can try to find something that was a stumper or extra challenging for this project, and as a modeling exercise to because I think some folks will be listening to this saying like, well, I can use this to be helping me choose my next clients, because wow, that sounds like those attributes are pretty great for clients. Good. Or other people might be, good, this, that's good for you. I've got transactional things to focus on. So there's a couple angles on there. And I'm wondering, like, even in this great, robust, flexible situation, like what puts that to the test?
Okay. All right. So yes, let's model
and
some
or
thinking.
What's the ultimate test to know that's really there, and that you're for sure you want to return that call from this
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about that, because I didn't trust didn't happen immediately with this thing, at least from and this is where I can talk about my perspective in the very beginning before Jesse was there. So Jesse can recuse himself from that stuff, but we'll talk about that in a second. How about in a minute and 30 seconds? Because before we go there, we have some other sponsors to thank, Rob. You want to talk about our Patreon page, Rob?
Yeah, absolutely. So patreon.com/leanintoart is a place where you can go, and some of you already go, and thank you very much for doing that. One of our ways to show our gratitude is to make sure that we pick 5 of you. I have written a shell script that picks randomly 5 people from a file I download from our Patreon page.
Of course
and
you
so,
have.
And so that's how I feel like this wasn't just based on me going eeny, meeny, miny, mo. This is computer random. So, it's probably not. Anyway, it's not lottery random, but it's random enough. So, so enough of that chatter. So you can go to patreon.com/leanintoart to support us. And why would you do that? Well, it's a place where you can get some all of our podcasts. You can download them there. You get access to the special feed that integrates both the main podcast, Lean Into Art, and our extra podcast that we do on the off weeks, Extra Lean. And I want to say thank you to 5 random supporters who are already our patrons. So thank you very much to the mysterious letter K. That's a supporter, and that's all we know them as, K. And then thank you very much to D. Jusan, who is on Twitter as @DJusan. Also, thank you very much to We Are LA Tech. And there's some folks in LA who do tech, and they're at We Are LA Tech on Twitter. And then thank you very much to Spencer Hollum. And I'm not sure what Spencer's Twitter is. And finally, thank you very much to Retro Outro, which is we've also known her as Control Alt Lee, and she's at Control Alt Lee on Twitter. So,
Dear Ashley.
And why do you go out there to do this? Because it's all about making this project more sustainable, and it's a very direct way to get your feedback. And one more thing, you get access to the a special post we do every month, which is like a private forum that we call the open mic post. And we just chat there, and just us, just the patrons and Jersey and me. So thank you very much for those of you who are already our patrons, and for those of you who are even thinking about it.
And yes, patreon.com/leanintoart if you want to help us out and make the show more sustainable. All right, time to go 10,000 feet up. So how about I play some old-timey music? Ah, nostalgia. We'll talk about nostalgia a little bit, probably.
Excellent.
Maybe.
No, yeah, that's great. I'm somehow now I'm animated with like I've got the rubber hose arms,
yeah,
and big white gloves, and
that's a song called "I Never See Maggie Alone," and
I
got a cat named Maggie, so
oh.
I like that song a lot. All right, so what do you want to talk about? How do you want to talk about frame up this idea of like modeling collaborating with a client?
Well, I'm curious. So we teased out this situation of well, okay, so maybe trust wasn't detectable right away, or didn't happen right away.
Right. When I first was brought in to talk to them, and this is, I think, a conversation that happens a lot of time with my line of work. And I think Jesse can attest to this because he's seen this at work where people, they meet me and they go, "Oh, you make comics? That sounds like fun. You must be a fun guy." And then they see me work and they go like, "Oh, he's teaching here. He's actually teaching."
You undersell, Jersey. You undersell.
Well, I don't know. I don't know how to talk. I mean, but I've seen the look change a lot. Like where they
mute Jersey's microphone. Let me tell you what happens. People are like, "What comics? What? What's his name?" And then they're like, "Don't know." And then they go, and Jersey's at an assembly, and he has absolutely won over our coalition stakeholders. Teachers who are like kind of grumbly in the back are like, "Whoa, this is magic." I mean, I have seen people say, "We're doing the comics assembly," and come back, "That jersey's amazing. I cannot believe it." And so it happens. It happens every time we have to do a new thing.
That's kind of you to say. But yeah, it's like I've spent a lot of years like really. I spent a lot of time winning over crowds, right? Like I got my feet wet in teaching by teaching in Detroit to communities where like they didn't have art programming at all, right? These are like kids who made it to 5th grade, never taking an art class, and not only having to like win the kids back to it, but like their administration, like really make a point to it's like if you got a school where there's no art class and you're comic book guy coming in, and this is like going on 10 years ago, so it was before like a lot of the superhero movies happened, so like wasn't quite where we are today. So yeah, I kind of cut my teeth on like some very difficult crowds and really learned a lot of persuasive techniques and also learning how to perform, right? So like you'd be entertaining but also instructive and all that stuff. But my point is that I think a lot of times when I'm engaging with new clients, especially because I work in a lot of advocacy roles, like as a teacher or as a comics artist / teacher, I tend to come up against like, "Well, that's cute. You make comics and we're glad you're here. You could do something entertaining with the kids, maybe, and we'll see." And then they see like the full value of what I have. I'm used to coming up against like a little bit of a client not knowing what I fully have to offer, right? Until they see it. And I don't take offense to it. It's like I know this is part of the whole process of getting to know. Like when you go on a date with somebody, and like not to be crude about my comparisons here, but when you go on a date with somebody, there's like a little bit of protection that you do, right? You don't just like spill all of your emotions on the table and like, "Oh my gosh, I can't see Pacific Rim because it's too scary for me." You guard some things, and understandably so. So when I first met with the different stakeholders in this project, when they were first like sort of envisioning this project, and they didn't even know what they really want to do for sure. They were like, "We want to do something with superheroes. What do you think?" I I could tell that they didn't know what to make of me, because I got very excited. I'm like, oh, you want to do comics for little kids that have like built-in messaging and exciting storytelling? I'm like, oh my God, I got a million ideas. And this is how you do it. You do it like Saturday morning cartoons where it's baked into the thing. You could put something on the rear end of it that sort of encapsulates the message, where you like speak it back to the kids again to make it more clear, or you could bake it in so it's a little bit more subtle, and you have the characters sort of like speak a few lines to it, like at some point, at a really critical point in the story. And I'm doing that, right? I'm doing that kind of excited thing, and they're like, okay, well, we just want a book, we want a 12-page book. What do you got for that? And so like consequently, I kind of peeled back and said like, okay, I'm gonna give them some ideas and we'll see what they respond to. And then there was some back and forth on things. There was some back and forth on things that I didn't expect, like certain character ideas they didn't think were appropriate. Like I remember there was like a really scary robot punk who actually, believe it or not, Jesse, the Cull in the new book are based kind of on that guy.
Yep. Yeah. I recognize it because we have the, I saw the character.
These guys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so like there was an early design I did like way in the beginning, and like I remember they said like he's a little too scary for second graders, and like maybe you can put him in the teen book, and I like sort of put that in my pocket and like, okay, well, but there were other ideas where it was like there were, I think, stakeholders that aren't there anymore, if I'm not mistaken, who were like really kind of confused about Dame Lady Cat. Like they didn't know what to make of her, and like I saw the potential. I'm like, oh, it's a cat dressed in Victorian clothes who can kick the crap out of anybody, and she's like she makes politeness awesome. Right? She takes the idea of being polite and turns it into like this amazing thing. Like, what if Bruce Lee and Mary Poppins were one person? What would that be like? Oh, and she's a cat, So I fully believed in the character from the start. But I remember there was like some head scratching, like, I don't know about this. But the cool thing is like, I remember right after the coloring book came out, and when they saw the kids react to it, like, the relationship changed overnight. The next meeting we had was like, all right, what do you want to do now? Throw some ideas at us. We're ready. We're receptive. We see that you understand what kids want. So,
and I am so glad you stuck with it, Jersey.
I am too. On project.
Well,
oh
my God. Oh my.
Pull up on the screen.
That's awesome. Yeah. There's that is so we teased talking about that. That was an appearance of the head of Dame Lady Cat's costume.
I wouldn't get to be a Victorian cat if you hadn't stuck with it. Stick to your guns on Dame Lady Cat.
Awesome. This is like, so yeah, Dame Lady Cat is like full on life, like adult life-size mascot costume. And it's super high quality. I've seen the Dame Lady Cat in action and it's really a sight, because it's super well done, and it's this character you've seen on the page of a comic that's created by in such this in like the story you told. It's like it's really a on the ground, community driven kind of thing. And it's not like, oh, you know what? We had a giant meeting that cost $200,000. And now, we have someone building 200 of these things, and from a factory in Saskatchewan. And it's like, anyway, it's just, it's not that kind of, it's surprising and really cool. So,
well, and it connects to what Jersey was just saying, because so they do the first book, and I entered on the second book, and we're sitting in this meeting, and additional stakeholders are showing up to help fund the project, and the ideas are flying all over the place. And it's like, we're going to make a game, we're going to make like a mobile game, we're going to make a theme song, we're going to have mascots, we're going to do all this stuff. And my boss was like, I think we just need to get the second comic out first. And I was like, yeah, we don't have money for mascots. And I mean, and part of that is it's a slow build. Like if we had tried to do all that right out the gate, I mean, I don't know we would have been pulled off.
No. Yeah, well, I can't say for sure, but I mean, it felt like, I remember that time, and it felt like there was like a lot of energy in that room, and there was a lot, like, we felt like it was such a successful thing that it was like, all right, let's start doing some moonshots. But yeah, I was grateful that there was somebody there to rein it all in, to say, like, let's focus on the second book and let's do a second test to see. And like, we did an iterative thing. So the iteration was, the first book was a coloring book comic, right? So like, I think they're and Jesse, you weren't there for it, but I think the early discussion was like, we're dealing with kids where reading level is where it is, and so there's not much you could do narratively, although we did, I think, come up with a pretty interesting story. So how can we get kids to engage with this thing more beyond just like a quick read? And it's like, well, let's make it a coloring book, and then like they can at least engage with it in like multiple levels. And we put like activities in the back of the book too, if I remember right. So then like the second book, it was like, okay, well, now let's do a full color comic. Now let's do a 12-page story with something more complex happening, you know?
And yeah, there were a lot of ideas, and I think it in some ways, the amount of energy and the kind of diffuse way in which the ideas were all over the place, it in some ways challenged the project. And so I was appreciative that Riley, my boss, was saying, you know, we really need to focus on a second book and make sure that we can get it out, and then we can do some of this other stuff. And in fact, at that point, I was just watching and observing, and her comment, and this is not a criticism of our partners at all, because they're wonderful and we wouldn't be able to have done it without them. She turned to me and said, we need a champion of this project to like distill all of this and to keep it going, because as it was at that point, there wasn't like a point person on all of that, really. And so I think she wisely saw that if this is going to really be, and it was in that meeting that we said, yeah, we're going to do one for every grade all the way up through, you know, their school career here in Chelsea School District. She said, you know, we're going to need someone who can do that. Pick me. I love comics.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's wild how many things that exist on this project that lead to really healthy collaboration, like having a clear point person, right? So like, I'm a proponent of very flat organizations and you know, not extreme hierarchy, but like if you have too much ambiguity, and it happens everywhere. It's like you're on a team who is excited and about a portion or all the project or whatever, and ideas come out, and now that they exist in outside of people's heads, maybe people get attached to them. And what if they get attached to many? And all of a sudden, navigating that like is not easy, right? So this is to people who get together to make stuff everywhere, not just your collaborators and stakeholders.
Right.
Now, I know I've worked on projects where there wasn't a point person, and everybody begins to feel a sense of their own kind of ownership over the thing that's being made, right?
Yeah.
They have their own skin in the game, as it were. And that's natural. And I mean, you should feel like you have skin in the game on a project that you care about. But when it came down to me as the artist on the project, serving that many different masters, and sometimes having to parse through different communication styles, it definitely bottlenecked things from time to time, and it made it difficult for me to understand what exactly the objective was. If that makes sense. I know I'm speaking very abstractly here, so as not to like talk out of school, but in the past this has happened to me, and I know that when Jesse became the point person, it streamlined so much, and it made my job so much easier, because I only had one person to deliver to and discuss with, and Jesse could sort of relay the value of what we were doing to the stakeholders in their language, right? I speak teacherese, but not necessarily at expert level, right? So it's great to have him there to serve in that function as well. And because Jesse is so knowledgeable about comics, it's like I can use a lot of shorthand with him that I wouldn't be able to do with other people. So that's immensely valuable.
It's awesome when that kind of thing emerges on teams.
Yeah, that was very lucky for me.
And I would say, you know, two thoughts are, I feel like I'm so fortunate to be, because it's a small part of my job, you know, like it's one little project initiative that we do, not so little anymore, but there are lots of things that we're doing. And so for me, it was like, oh, great, this one. I mean, I like a lot of things we're doing. Well, careful. I do. I like a lot of the things we're doing, but this one, it had a personal, you know, I grew up loving comics. And so to be, I'm not a cartoonist, but to have the opportunity to help make comics in this way, you know, it's very special to me. So, so yeah, you know, I felt very fortunate to be in that role. I will say that one other thing, Jersey, I don't know if I've shared this with you, but Riley has said that she doesn't read comics, but when she is around Jersey, she wishes she did. And from a positive way, not that she doesn't understand anything, but, and I think that, yeah, a lot of it is bridging the gap, and a lot of it is distilling, and a lot of it is sometimes filtering. You know, you'll send me something and I'll say, okay, I'm going to take it to the team, and I send it out to everyone, and I say, you know, send your feedback to me, and then I will make it into something succinct and try and clarify as needed, and then send it to Jersey. You know, because we're contracting with you, and I don't want to spend a lot of our money on clarifying, you know, you know, like not weird, but different communication styles and details that may or may not really be that important to the project. And so I think I think we do that for a lot of projects in my role. And so like that, it works well to do that.
So yeah, so I would say in navigating, like if I partner with other organizations in the future, that would be a form of investigation that I would make early on. I would start looking for who's going to be my point person. Do you have a point person? Can you assign a point person? Can I talk with the point person? Can we have some discussions and sort of feel each other out about like where our knowledge begins and ends, so we can form a dialogue and find a communication style that works, right?
Well, I mean, that sends a signal that the group client, the person you're serving, has some sort of organized approach that will make it easier to get to where you want to go. But in the absence of it, I mean, you had a strategy earlier on, which this is me paraphrasing, but you sort of you land the gig and believe in it enough to sort of survive one build of a thing, and then see what emerges. Because sometimes, like, I mean, like in the creative process, there's nothing that speaks for the work better than being able to experience the work, the finished work.
True. And in that particular instance, this was a situation where I believed in the project and I believed in what it was proposing to do enough. The thought of reaching rural kids through comics to help assist them in making difficult choices that's very harmonious with my worldview, right? So that was worth the risk of possibly not, you know, enjoying everything about the process. And I wound up enjoying everything about the process. But at the outset, it looked like, I don't know what this is going to be. You know, this could be silliness. So yeah.
And I would say one other thing that this is not a self-boast, but I write the grants for funding the project still, you know, and when I'm making the budget for our coalition, and I, you know, believe in this project. So I do we still review the data and have the evidence there that it matters, but it's, you know, I see the value, so it stays. And so there are ways in which, you know, you do need that person. I mean, in particular, a couple of years ago, I think a real turning point was when we got the Michigan Council of Arts and Cultural Affairs grant, and we did 3 books in a year. Because at the time we were doing a book, we were doing a book, but it was always like shoestring one book. How are we going to get this to these kids before they graduate or, you know, move on to the next grade? And so it was always kind of like, where's the money coming from? And so when we got that grant, we were able to do 3 books in a year, which I, you know, appreciate Jersey getting done, because it was a definite acceleration. But it gave us breathing room. It like kind of got us on a schedule where we had some space before we were kind of in a panic way, and gave us a chance to catch our breath and really form up a plan. It's also how we ended up with the comics workshop, because we had already covered 3 books. And so the next year we wrote for the same grant and were able to add the comics workshop to
I'm
it.
so glad you went there, because this is another element that I want to lay on this in terms of forging good collaborations. So you talk about like, what's the culture of the organization you're working with? And Jesse already outlined at the outset of this thing that there's like the youth steering committee and the adult steering committee. And like, you guys are actively seeking input from the people of the community who are using the stuff that you do. And one of the ways this sort of culture extends out is when I was brought in, maybe my expectation was that I would be just a simple contractor, and this would be like, yes, service based, but very much like, I did my work, dusted my hands off, I'll see you guys later. But very early on, seriously sort of asked me to be a representative of the book and show up to the book drops, because there's a value in that. This is the guy who made the thing for you, right? Whoa, that's the author.
Yeah.
But also inviting me to stick around and pitch ideas for other projects. And so Jesse came to me and said, like, what do you want to do next? We've done the books. What do you want to do next? And I said, I remember saying, what would be really cool is if we could find a way for the kids who are engaging with this stuff to write the next chapter. And then Jess was like, oh my gosh, bingo. Yes, let's do a thing where you teach a class, and then the output of that class will be a comic that we print. And that's how the anthology was born. I remember pitching it just like, wouldn't it be cool if I could make a lesson plan for teachers to incorporate it into their curriculum? Right? Like, that would be as simple as that. Like, the teachers can do it and I don't have to be there. And like Jesse like thought, no, this would be much more robust if it's 4 weeks with you, and then you guide them through what you did and then set them doing it. Right.
Print the book and do a book signing event. And
yeah.
I'm like, let's make this a thing. Well, and the other part I should also say is that, one of the values for us is that kids are less likely to use substances if they know that other adults in their community care about them. And so, yes, we want them to feel like this is a local thing, but having access to the cartoonist who's created these books for them, like specifically for them, says, we care about you. Like, I don't know. I've said multiple times, I would have peed my pants if I was a child and this is what's in my school. I would have been like, ah.
Well, that's where our motivations are very much in sync, because yes, the whole reason I got into doing it was because I thought about growing up as a kid in a very rural area, 300 people in the town, right? And that was in the 2000 census, so it was probably smaller then. I don't know what I would have done to get access to a cartoonist who could teach me how to do the stuff that I wanted to do, and to show me that I wasn't weird for liking it so much. And the other cool thing that we found is that by doing that, we're reaching kids who don't engage with other seriously projects, right? So it's reaching a whole different constituency.
Or they are starting to engage with other seriously projects because they were doing stuff in the comic, and then they're just around more comfortable with us. One of my favorite examples is he's now a sophomore in high school, but the first time he did anything with Seriously was when we were releasing the 5th grade book. Maybe it was a 4th grade book, whatever, it doesn't matter. He was a 5th grader, and the way that we were going to do the assembly to release the book was to have the kids be characters and read for the characters in front of the audience. That was marginally, I don't know what I would say. We didn't do it again, so you can interpret it that how you want. But he shows up with camo because he's going to be Captain Seriously. He knows this. He shows up with extra camo for whoever's going to be Captain Yarley, so she's prepared. And he's like ready to go, and he's all about it. He had never done anything seriously after that, or before that. After that, he starts coming to our cinema events. He's part of our youth steering committee. He's gone to DC to help represent us in a lot of ways. And whoa, goosebumps moment. Here it comes. He is Monstrark, the giant monster in the assembly this last spring, where he's a youth volunteer who's coming back to his school as a giant evil robot monster.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
And so it's like this narrative thread that we're creating in this community where this kid gets involved because he gets to participate in this thing, and then he's just like he's not, I was going to say swept up, and there's some swept up, but also he buys in and he cares and he invests and he chooses to spend his time that way, that he wants to be involved. And, you know, so much of what we're doing is creating opportunities for kids to do things that are going to be positive for them. And it's, yeah.
That's beautiful. Honestly. Let's see, what an awesome project. But even with that, it wasn't like there's a lot of there's a lot of realism and pragmatism surrounding all this too, and discipline. It wasn't just like we are good in we're well intentioned, but we're not well informed on this topic. Like you've got a strong base of expertise in this topic, and then you're finding ways in which you can deliver value based on that expertise. And that's where I see all these really cool creative practices that that you're using to produce it, and then part of that, and then how you're and then like participating with your audience in so many cool ways. I'm blown away, and I'm just sort of a bunch of reaction there. But
yeah, I feel like this is something that needs to happen in more cities, because
absolutely,
from a cartoonist standpoint, this is literally everything I ever wanted out of my career. Everything. It encapsulates like every dream I ever had as an 11-year-old. This project has that for me. You know, like the creative playground that I have virtually, you know, full control over, right? I have people that I'm serving. I'm using this control in service of something, but there's very, very little in terms of like, no, Jersey, you can't use robots, you know, very little in that regard. And then such support from the team in terms of, you know, putting me in front of the kids to, you know, when we're delivering the books, like doing assemblies for 500 kids. And then the mascots, and like getting the kids involved and participating in the thing by making stories of their own with the universe. Temporary tattoos. It sounds potentially silly, but like I got so jazzed in seeing temporary tattoos of the characters.
Oh man, I hope we're going to link to on our Seriously Chelsea's YouTube page. You can see the video. That's the assembly, and you have to pull it up
now so I can.
You have to, you know, weather through my yakking at the front end, and then you do Jersey does some instruction before the mascots interrupt. And I mean, I have a very rich, full professional job, but by golly, that was the best day of my life. I was a certifiable fool that day. It was so fun, and kids reacting. I mean, the video. So we had another company in town who helped us even edit the video so that you can see audience reaction as they watch it. You can see the assembly unfold, and it just is like. That's what I got it
pulled up now. So like what Jesse did is, and this was his idea. I want to give him credit for this. We did the assembly like normal. I'm up there doing a drawing demo, and then Jesse interrupts me at one point. He's like, I just got word that Monstrark, the bad guy from the comic, is on the loose in Chelsea. And then he pulls up on the big screen on which I was previously just drawing this thing that we're watching now, where Monstrark is running around town and Captain Seriously and Dame Lady Cat are trying to chase him down and stop him. And then I'm going to scoot forward a little bit ahead. Oh, there he is at the coffee shop. So good. But then he shows up at the kids' school where the assembly is being held. So suddenly Monstrark's in their school, and these kids recognize us, and then you can hear the kids are screaming, like, what? He's in our school. And they see their school administrators like interacting with him. You know, it's like, oh, you got to sign in order to come into the school. And so here he is trying to sign in. She opens the door, and Monstrark's just too darn big to get through. Whoa! Oh, I'm stuck. And so now they get to see their teachers trying to push him through and squeeze through, kick him through the door.
It's so awesome.
Right. And so, but then like things get, he's signing in. But, and then like as the heroes are chasing him, like they're like, the teacher comes out like, no, we walk single file in the hall. And even the heroes, they are heroes after all.
Well, and it's even that, I mean, even that is supporting the school. Like from my perspective, we're getting some teachers to have a little bit of celebrity in this project. And I mean, they're already celebrities in their own school, but we're celebrating them in their roles. celebrating their rules even, you know, like there's a joke that we're doing that. And then, yeah, there a bunch of groundhogs in the crowd, their heads just are like popping up out of the
in the hallway just outside the gymnasium, and the kids start going crazy. And then they hear it's gym multi-purpose room. Here he comes. And at this point, yeah, it was like pandemonium. And he turns that corner, and then the kid walks in the Monster costume, and the room goes bananas.
I'm bananas.
Yeah.
I didn't know. And at the end of I'm a blathering mess. I don't make any sense at the end because I'm like on cloud 9.
Yeah.
Oh, and so the kid, I mean, this is a freshman in high school. Look at him. I mean, he looks like a robot. He just did an amazing job.
That's so great.
Well, now there's so many different angles and so much that we could explore on this. Yet I think where we're starting to do it, I would propose that we're landing on this kind of a really big question that I think will be hard enough to take a swing at, but like maybe we should try. Both of your reactions are utter joy, pride, and just deep satisfaction and belief. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yep. Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering if after we take one more break, if we could dig down and find a couple of pieces of food for thought, as far as like either how you think that came about, like, oh, these 3 things are the key ingredients, however you want, or how you would recommend someone who asked you this, like, how do I find my, amazing thing like that? I want a project where that is how I feel. How does
Gotcha. Yeah, that sounds completely fair. All right, so let's do that. We're going to take about 1 minute to talk about one more thing that you can do to support the show, and then we're going to answer this question of like, okay, what's the takeaway? How can we put this experience that Jesse and I had into some kind of actionable thing to try? How could we replicate this kind of thing in more places? That's something Jesse and I have talked about a lot, so I'm sure we've got some ideas. But before we go there, if you've enjoyed this discussion, if you find value in what we do at leanintoart.com, a great thing you can do that costs you $0, right? We talked about lots of products you can buy and ways to support us financially, but this is a way you can support us just with a little bit of your time. You can go to iTunes, give the show a star review, however many stars you think it deserves. You don't even have to write a full review, but we do appreciate when you do. If you're watching the video on YouTube, giving the video a thumbs up, that helps more people find. Both of these things help more people find the show. So when they're searching through iTunes, like, I want to listen to art literature podcasts, what's good? Giving us a rating helps raise the show in the rankings so more people can find the show. Same thing with YouTube. Oh, this video seems to get a lot of interaction. Therefore, I'm going to turn it up in more search results. So that's what we're asking you to do, is help us become more findable by showing your appreciation of what we do. Just takes a couple minutes of your time. And thank you to everybody who has given the video a thumbs up or given us a review on iTunes. It means the world to us to know that the stuff that we make is meaningful to you. I know that I personally, when I go to a place of business and I get something that I really enjoy, I rarely feel the inclination to go up and say, oh my gosh, this pen is so wonderful, I cried. But I try to remind myself to do that every once in a while because I know it means something to the person who actually makes the stuff. Like I was, when I was at TCAF last year, Ann and I went to a raw food restaurant. Did I tell you about this, Rob?
No.
It's something I always wanted to try. And we went, and oh my God. And it was really lovely because we were at a comic convention, so we were around a lot of people, but we like kind of took this moment to say, like, let's just be husband and wife for one meal. And let's try something really kind of neat and interesting. Okay, we'll go to a place that none of our friends would want to go to, with this raw food place. And we had this meal, and it was just fantastic. It was the first time where I got up and I was like, I got to say something. I went to the back of the restaurant and I found the chef, and I'm like, oh my God, this is so good. Thank you so much. And you could see that this person doesn't get that every day, So like the meaningful interaction, I know it's valuable, and we thank everybody who does that for us. Okay, final thoughts. Prompt us, Rob, or do you have a prompt?
Okay. Feel free to take either of these prompts, because I think you had an angle and I have an angle on this, and either way is awesome. Whatever feels natural here. So,
okay.
One angle on this is how can others replicate this, and another angle on how could they replicate it is the whole like the kabuishi thing of like, so you're prepare for this opportunity, but then how would you go about landing it?
Mm.
You know, how do you, because in a way there's this project as far as the advocacy and the amazing work that you're doing in the space that seriously works, but then there's also like how you work, like just the how is pretty great.
Yeah.
And portable to all sorts of spaces.
Well, I would say from our standpoint, because this is kind of, I mean, going back to the 12 sector, different sector representation in our coalition, it becomes important to be able to engage and embrace difference, and that we're talking about people who are focused on different things. They have some different priorities. They have probably, and there's, but finding the overlap there, and I mean, it not from like a wheeling and dealing perspective, but like a genuine, authentic, like engaging someone who's different than you and being okay with that. I think that is really, really shown. There's been a lot of value for us, and that happening. You know, we kind of talked about it, like, whoa, comics, what? I don't, you know, or some of the other perspectives that came up. And so, and then kind of step off of that, connecting and engaging that difference, but then also like genuinely listening to hear what that person is saying, or those trades or that group or those kids are saying, really giving an ear to what they're saying, and maybe even thinking about the why they're saying it, I think has been like bread and butter for us. And so if you're thinking about doing a similar thing, I guarantee there are other people who want to do cool stuff in your community. You know, I guarantee there are other people who there is some overlap somewhere, and you just have to be around people and open enough, and sometimes patient enough to see that or find it, or to both experience it. Yeah.
I would say too that something that Jesse and I have talked about off mic is, and I know this is something, Rob, this is a drum you and I beat a lot, is how did you phrase it, Jesse? Leadership in the
Servant leadership.
What was that?
Yeah, servant leadership.
Servant leadership.
Mm-hmm.
When I got involved with the Seriously project, and it was when I was having performing an artist in residency in Chelsea. And I want to make this clear. When the library approached me about the artist in residency, I wasn't sure what it meant. All I knew was they were interested in promoting comics and, you know, paying me, you know, a stipend to do some work in advocating for comics. I'm like, okay, let's see what it is. And I remember I said to the director of the library at the time, this was right around the time I started getting involved with Seriously, I said, I'm here as your artist in residence. I said, abuse me. Use me in whatever way you need to help get this message across. And he said, are you sure? And I said, you bet. Like, put me wherever you think I can be of service, wherever you think I can help. And so that meant I did a comics presentation for the Rotary, right? I stood in front of a bunch of Rotarians and said, this is why I think comics are so cool. You know, they sent me to retirement homes. They sent me to, what was that other place? It wasn't the VFW. It was the Lions Club, right? I did presentations for the Lions Club. I got trotted out as not a salesman, but sort of like an advocate salesman to like every conceivable stakeholder in the city, right? I think like the only group I didn't talk to was the Downtown District Authority. Like every other group, I mean, I remember, and Jesse, I was just telling you about this the other day, and I know I've told the story on the show. Like I did that presentation at Silver Maples for like a whole bunch of important people in the town, like the chief of police and like the fire department and the mayor, and all these people were there, and I thanked the wrong town and I got booed. But I turned it around. I told the story on the show in the past. Like, it was like the moral for me is like, you know, live your life like you're 5 years down, because then you can laugh at these things. Because at the time it felt pretty awful. I'm like, oh, I was here to represent something and support something, and I kind of did the bad thing. But I know I turned it around, and I wound up doing a pretty good talk that, you know, touched people's hearts and whatever. But yeah, like, so very quickly I made it clear to everybody involved that I'm here to help. I don't know how I can help yet. Here's some ways I think I can help. And if you got ideas, I want to hear them. And I think showing up with that spirit of service, even if you're just a contractor, I think can net some pretty awesome dividends.
The second book was funded by the Rotary Club. I mean, a grant through the Rotary Club.
There we go. So yeah, I really strongly believe in that. Like, if I show up and I can listen to them and hear where the needs lie, you know, it's like, I think that's part of my personal system is when I begin an arrangement with an organization. And this is how, like, my relationship with the Ann Arbor Arts Center has grown over the years to where now they're a partner with the Ann Arbor Comics Arts Festival. Is I started teaching there. And so again, it's a contractual relationship. I'm there to provide a service. I'm here to teach comics classes. But then I start talking with the administrators and I find out and I listen, like, where are your needs? What are the kinds of things you want to do? Who are the kind of people you want to get in here more? And when I hear where I can help, I say, well, I do this. You know, if you ever want that, I'm happy to provide it as a service, you know. And I think that I mean, Jesse and I are very much aligned in that way, and that winds up making really cool things together. But sometimes it's a matter of building up trust over years, right?
Yeah, it takes patience.
Yeah, it does.
That sounds pretty great. I think like that little set of advice could be a handy poster or infographic summarizing the Jesse and Jersey servant leadership recommendations.
I don't know. Did I miss anything, Jesse? I don't want to have the last word on this.
No, but I will say that there are other groups. I mean, some maybe about substance abuse prevention, drugs and alcohol stuff, but other stuff that's protective. You know, like sexual health for kids and just, you know, reducing violence. And there are all sorts of organizations that are looking for creative ways to help kids and the community grow stronger. And it might, you know, they might not be ready to ask you to create a comic for them, but being aware of what they're doing and having a sense of why it's important to your community, there are a lot of easy access points there. And quite honestly, we're not the only ones creating. I mean, I found out recently that not far from us, some years ago, preceding us, they were making a comic and they had a mascot.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. Not as good as ours. Oh, shoot.
Servant leadership. Oh, snap.
That's a little bit of healthy pride, I think.
Oh, darn right. It's yeah. So
well,
who is this other group? Like, so this was in your area or
neighboring coalition, neighboring county, who has the same. They had different funding stream then. They have a similar funding stream now. They had a comic and they had a mascot. I don't know who did their comic, so maybe that makes a difference. I also, I don't know how the comic came about. You know, I don't know all the collaborative pieces that built that. I have never read it. So I don't know enough details to really say that ours is better than theirs.
Well, okay, but I'm thinking of another thing that was a discussion we had early on at the very, like in the first couple books that we did. I remember all of us sort of saying, we don't want to do the pamphlet that appears to be a comic but isn't, right? The language was spoken very clearly. We want this to be a comic first and foremost, and make it clear to the kids that this is a comic. It's a real comic. It's not just like, here's a 2-page thing where it's like, don't talk to strangers, bye. And something that I know, Rob, you've talked about on the show before is forming a persona. In every book, we have a really serious roundtable discussion creating of a persona of who are we serving with this thing, right? What, like Jesse said, like, what are fourth graders dealing with right now? And we're talking with all the people who work with the kids. We're talking with, you know, librarians. We're talking with school administrators. We're talking with school teachers. And as we get ready to do the 9th grade book, we're going to enter that discussion again. Where are 9th graders at? And what are they dealing with specifically, but in terms of life events, in terms of developmentally? And then I, as a contractor, as I pointed out earlier, am spending a lot of time inhabiting that mindset. and really trying to empathize with that person. So when I do the dire, sort of more serious version of the story with like the, like the kind of grim art and the brittle, encrusted artwork that I did for it, I'm not making fun of the kids. I'm not saying like, I know what you 8th graders want. You want Katniss Everdeen shooting arrows at people. All right, I'll just do that, I guess. There you go. Shut up, kid. I'm really saying like, okay, what was I experiencing? And what have I seen my teens, the kids I work with, what are they experiencing? Like really inhabiting so I think in cases where I've seen it not happen as successfully, we can never know where, the things fell off the sprocket. But I would suspect that would be a place of investigation to begin. Was everybody forming a persona and a clear picture of who they're trying to serve? And then was the artist involved really sitting down and trying to empathize with that person and inhabiting their worldview so as to create something that can be communicated authentically to that person?
Yeah. And again, we just handed out the 8th grade book yesterday, and what were they responding to? They said like, is that really the clock tower in ruins? And
okay, we gotta talk about this because Jesse, you did something so brilliant, because I wasn't sure how we were going to launch this book. By the way, I should say, okay, so for years, kids are growing up with these bright, bold, colorful, funny stories, right? All full of Jersey's sense of boundless optimism and character-driven humor, right? And so Jesse walks into this room full of 8th graders, and 8th graders are 8th graders, right? It's early in the morning. They're in 8th grade.
They're sleepy, but very cool.
Yeah, they're cool kids. But it's like, you got to kind of, sometimes it can feel like a one-way street when you're dealing with that age group. And I know with the teens that I teach at the Ann Arbor Arts Center, they're there because they really want to be. And I can still, like, I feel like it's the first 2 sessions where I'm like winning their trust. Like, okay, express yourself around me. It's okay. So Jesse does this thing. Could you walk us through it? I could just like hold up the.
Yeah.
I can pretend to be you.
Well, and just to add another piece here, like I'm a guest in their classroom, and even though it's the teacher's classroom, the students are the ones that spend all the time there, more time than I do. So I'm going in, and I know that I have to do some performing because I have to do a little bit of selling or advocating for the book because, like, I'm a guest there, and so I'm thinking, okay, well, I actually just kind of thought about what our process. I kind of went back to our process a little bit, and so I said, okay, so you talk about seriously, and you went to comics, and I'm like, yeah, and so you guys remember this book, and I show, it's like great stories, exciting characters, bright colors, yeah. Well, we blew it up and killed off some characters, and so that's what you're gonna get. And kids were like, you what? Blew up? Who died?
Oh yeah, you even said like, yeah, we kind of killed off some characters, so the counseling office is open if you need it for anything. Like he's really like bracing them to be upset.
Oh,
which to an 8th grader is like super tempting. Like, am I gonna be psychologically damaged from this? I'm in.
So and then they like,
they turn to page 1, and sure enough, they see their town in ruins. And I heard so many kids go, "Oh my God, they really did! They really blew up the town."
Is that the clock tower?
Is that the clock tower? Is that really?
Oh,
who are these new people?
Wow.
So they went from this very like leaned back kind of attitude to suddenly like they're all flipping through, and then like Jesse's like, "Oh, do you have any questions for Jersey?" No, they didn't, because they're all reading the darn book.
Yeah, immediately. Here's a book I want you to engage with. Now I'm going to ask you to think of questions.
But they all were like this,
Yeah,
it was great. It couldn't have gone better, and that was just such a great way to ease them into the transition. So good.
It's yeah, and I also want to add that I think we said patience, but and engaging difference, but a very real example of that with this project is in the second year when we were talking about 100 projects, mascots came up, and I kid you not, my response was, "What, mascots? Like, come on, let's get a second." I was in the like, let's make sure we get another book out, and I am wearing a cat head now and loving it. And so part of it is, like hearing those ideas, and sometimes it's the patient that it comes around to that, or even myself, allowing myself to get sold on things that I didn't buy into initially. but yeah, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that we were fortunate through different circumstances, but we were fortunate we had some extra grant funds and we could apply it to something like that. And we could not have planned for it. I mean, it was life circumstances and other stuff that came up. So like we could not have planned for it, but the fact that that person had that idea and we listened enough to, and you know, remember it 4 years, 3-4 years later, you know, thank goodness.
So what I'm hearing is that when you have enough empathy and you're willing to test your assumptions, you might find your own cat head suit.
That is the truth. Or giant evil robot that the mascot company says is the most complex design they've ever worked with.
Oh, that's true.
That's a brag.
They did say that.
That is a full-blown brag. I'm so proud of that.
That's awesome.
So yeah,
And kids really like it.
now we have the question to ask Rob on the mountaintop. How do I find my cat head? That's all well and good for you, but where's my cat head?
Yep.
It's in your own community.
Yes.
I mean,
What color is your cat head? I mean, this is a book series waiting to happen.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh my God, I'm actually sweating here from this discussion. All right, gosh, Jesse, thank you so much for making time to be here to share all this.
It's been an honor. Thank you so much for having me.
Is there anything else that you might want to talk about or promote or plug that that you want our constituency to know about that you guys are doing or that you're doing?
I am. Thank you for this platform, Jersey. I am squirming hard, and it's. Well, you can find Seriously with Seriously Chelsea on Twitter and Facebook, and we have an Instagram. And so sometimes you can catch glimpses of some of the other stuff we do, but then also, future Captain Seriously projects if that's of interest to you. I would also say that I'm happy to be contacted if you want some additional help and like talking through how would this look in my actual community? What are some groups that I can actually be looking for? Like I said, the grant that funds us funds lots of coalitions all across the United States.
Yeah, it's a National Endowment for the Arts grant. Yeah.
Yeah. And well, so that one and the Drug Free Communities grant. Yeah. So there's a lot of opportunity there. So I'm happy to be contacted for that. And I'm on Twitter if you want to look at my Twitter. I'm not on Twitter very much. And the joke here is that I'm not a cartoonist, and I'm just trying to return to that lost love and dipping my toe in something called Inktoberfest. And I was going to secretly hide it on Twitter, but now that it's no longer a secret. So if you want to see what it's like for someone who's not drawn regularly in 20 years, you can follow me on Twitter.
That sounds super awesome.
Yeah, what a great sale. Okay, I'm Jesse Kaufman on Twitter.
You need to sign off to everything in that way.
The other joke is that I don't do anything in 140 characters, so follow at your own risk.
Well, you're on Instagram or Snapchat too, right?
Yeah. So personally, I'm on Instagram. It's dogpile with the O is a 0 and the I is a 1.
Okay.
And yeah, so.
Well, we'll link to them in the show notes. But
thanks.
Hey, I think Inktober is the perfect way to like dive in and sort of do immersion therapy and like reacquainting yourself with art. I mean, I know that's what I use it for. I mean, like, because I don't get nearly enough time to draw on paper since I've switched to like a mostly digital workflow. And finding time to like sketch in a sketchbook, it's like I know it's something I should be doing, but it's something I don't do nearly enough. So yeah, it's like couch to 5K, man.
It is, and I thought it would be a good opportunity. And I'm going to back up to say that professionally, I loved comics growing up for years and years and years, and always read them on my own and wasn't really like public about loving comics. And through this job and this project have been able to engage with comics in a new way that has emboldened me. I don't know. We'll see if it's, but has given me an opportunity to engage with something I love once again. And so the takeaway for someone else is that those people exist. They're little hidden centaurs that do love the thing you love, but you just don't know it because they're not telling anybody.
Yeah. I think that's a terrific final thought too. Yeah, the centaurs. You named them, Jesse. All right.
Great. Glad I could contribute.
Well, yeah, thank you, Jesse. I mean, seriously, yeah, this was very awesome. Deeply appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so we'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode, and until then, I have been Jersey Drozd of leanintoart.com and Jersey on Twitter.
And I've been Rob Stenzinger of leanintoart.com and Rob Stenzinger on Twitter.
Okay, bye.
Show notes for this episode can be found at leanintoart.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at the user leanintoart, and you can reach us via email at leanintoart@gmail.com. And remember, leaners aren't wieners. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, I'm going to kill the stream, everybody. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Yes, thank you very much.